everyone. So I'm Daniel Waisberg, and I'm an advocate, an analytics advocate at Google. And basically my job is to help people understand and use analytics in a more effective way. And so I do a lot of speaking, I do some writing. I also work with our partners to publish case studies to showcase the best uses of the tool. And I also do a lot of data analysis and visualization internally. And basically, I'm based in, I work out of the London office, but I live in Cambridge, Cambridge, UK. It's a very nice place, and you can see here the apple tree, for those of you that have heard about Isaac Newton, right? So he sat beside, below the apple tree, and an apple fell on his head, and he discovered the theory of gravitation. So that's one important thing that happened in Cambridge. But today I'm going to talk about a little bit about another Isaac, another type of scientist, you can say. So this is Isaac Newton. I especially like him for his sideburns. I think he has very cool sideburns. And well, he wrote over 500 books on science fiction, and he's one of the best-known science fiction writers. And one of the things that he wrote about a lot was robots, right? So he wrote a lot about the interaction between human beings and robots, and he had great stories about how we will build robots in the future. And one of the things that I like about the stories is that every robot has two very important factors that is taken into consideration when they're building the robot. The first one is the brain, right? And he calls it the positronic brain, right? And the brain is formed by a series of interconnections between some kind of hardware. And every robot had a specific task in mind when he was built, and the brain was built in a way that the robot could do only this task, right? And the second thing that he took into consideration was the context, right? So the robots, for example, there is a story about the robots that were built for Mars, and this is a real picture from NASA. And there were stories about the robots were built from Mercury, right? And they were built very differently. So both the brains and the context. So those things, I think they're very interesting because analytics can or should be looked at, taking into consideration those two things. And the brains is, your analytics platform, and hopefully it will be Google Analytics. And the second one is the context of what's going on around your data that you can use to make better decisions using it. So I'm going to talk about both of them. And first of all, I'd like to talk about the brain, or your analytics platform. And I think there are two really important questions that you should be asking yourself when you look at your data. And the first one is it accurate? And the second one is it complete, right? Those two things, you really want to have a data set that is both accurate and complete, right? So, I'm going to talk a little bit about each of them. And first of all, is it accurate, right? And, we have been working, I'm part of the Google Analytics team, and we have been working a lot on tools that help you understand if your data is accurate. And I think the first one is Google Tag Manager, which helps you, organize your tags and make sure that, they're implemented everywhere. And every time that you make a change to your tags, they are, they happen across all your sites or all your properties. And it's really a robust and scalable way for you to implement Google Analytics and other, tracking tools and tags. Now, the second one is Google Analytics Diagnostics. For those of you that have logged into Google Analytics, there is a bell icon on the top right corner, basically like Google product. And when you click on that bell, you'll see a list of notifications that tells you, what is going on with your data. So sometimes you might see, there's a bad filter that is, messing with your data. There might be a goal that is not behaving in the expected way. And there might be other things that you're not doing right with your, missing tags, for example, you would see on the notification. And that's very important, and you should definitely check the notifications. Now, the third thing is Google Tag Assistant. For those of you that use it, it's a Google Chrome extension. And basically, it lets you see what you are sending to Google Analytics from a specific page, right? And we did a major update in August, and now you can not only see what each page is sending to Google Analytics, you can go through a funnel, for example, in your website and record it, and then see exactly what you're sending to Google Analytics across. And then you can change something and see how it would have affected the data. So it's a great way to help you to make your data more accurate. Now, the second thing is it complete, right? And that's, I think it's such an important thing that, I wrote a book on the subject called Google Analytics Integrations, and I published it in May. And basically, the book is all about, how can you bring all your data into Google Analytics and turn it into a centralized data analysis platform so that, you see everything in one place and you can make more meaningful and, actionable decisions using your data, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about the integrations because I think, it really turns your data into a much more useful tool. So the first thing, we have, a bunch of official integrations. So things like, if you use AdWords and Google Analytics, we have a very deep link into the tools where you can see not only, how many people your AdWords campaigns brought to Google Analytics, but also, how much did it cost and things like, CTR and other metrics and dimensions, and that will help you understand the return on investment from your AdWords campaigns. Or, if you are a publisher, for example, we have an integration with AdSense where, if you have ads on your page, you can see from which page people left your website by clicking on an ad, or, which referrals brought people that ended up clicking on an ad, and this kind of information, which is also, if someone is clicking on an ad on your page, it's like a conversion, so you should know about that. Right? And there are other integrations like Google Play, the iTunes Store, DoubleClick, BigQuery, and others, official integrations. Now, there's something else called custom integrations, which basically are ways for you to send other types of data into Google Analytics. So, for example, you can send your CRM data into Google Analytics with relevant information. You can send information from other advertising platforms like Twitter, Facebook, Bing, and others. And you can send things like MailChimp as well. You can send information into Google Analytics. And basically, this is done via a few features like data import and the measurement protocol. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So I'll give a few examples, both how do you make data more accurate and how do you make it more complete as well. Now, the first example, probably all your companies, they have something like that somewhere, right? So a table talking, showing, your customer IDs, where are they from, some kind of loyalty or member status like, gold, silver, bronze, and, you might have other information as well. Now, this information is incredibly important when you're analyzing the data because, if you're looking at your behavior on your website, and you can segment it by silver and gold, you can suddenly optimize your website for gold users or for silver users, right? And that becomes way more meaningful. So the way to do that is pretty simple. Basically, every time that someone comes to the website and logs into the website, you have to check your database, right, to see if this person is a customer. And when you bring that information back, you just send to Google Analytics as well as, in this case, a custom dimension, right? And what you will get is that suddenly you can merge both information from your internal systems and behavioral data from people coming to the website, and then it becomes way more powerful, and you can use this data together to optimize the website further. Another example, so I'm a publisher. I have a website called Online Behavior for the last 5 years, and I've been working with many authors that write about analytics. And basically, in a previous, before I joined Google, I created this, way before I joined Google, I created this website. And my idea was to make money out of content, right? So what I did, I added, ads to the pages, right? Like every news website. Now, I used a tool called DoubleClick for Publishers, and basically, it's a Google tool as well. And what it does is that you implement a tag once on the website, and every time that you want to serve an ad on the website, you add that advertisement into DoubleClick, and DoubleClick show it on the website. Right? And so what I can do, I can sell it directly. So for example, I could sell impressions to the marketing festival if they wanted to advertise, and they would say, I want 50,000 impressions, and I would, add to DoubleClick those impressions, and I would say, all the other impressions that I'm not selling directly, just backfill with AdSense, right? Because I don't want any unfilled ads on my website. That's great. It's a great solution. It's very scalable. Now, the problem is that Google Analytics has had an integration with AdSense for many years, where I could see, for example, if someone landed on the website and clicked on an ad, I could see that. And for me, that's extremely important because that's a transaction with my website. I get money for that, right? Now, the problem is that up till last July, if someone would click on that marketing festival ad that I sold directly, I wouldn't see on Google Analytics, which was a very big problem because, someone came to my website, let's suppose someone landed on a content page, clicked on an ad, and left to a website, and, for me, that's a conversion, right? But Google might say that it was a bounce because, there was no integration between DoubleClick for Publishers and Google Analytics, which, is not the case anymore. Last July, we launched an integration between Google Analytics Premium and DoubleClick for Publishers. And I think that's, a great example of how, through an integration, you can make data not only more complete, but also more accurate. So I think I really like this example, and it, changed my life. So a last example, and, a very important example. So some of you, might use different, advertising platforms, right? And as I mentioned before, if you use AdWords, we have a very deep link between AdWords and Google Analytics. So there is no problem. You just click a few buttons, and suddenly you can see AdWords information inside Google Analytics, right? Which is great. So you see both pre-click and post-click information in one place. Now, well, if you use another advertising platform, you have a problem, right? Because all your behavioral data is in one place, and your advertising data, they are in another place. Let's say, Twitter, right? Now, you have to link, so you can start looking at the data in both, but, it's never accurate, so it causes, a lot of issues. And you have to start, managing spreadsheets and stuff like that, which, becomes unmanageable very quickly. Now, what you can do, on Google Analytics, we have solutions for that. First of all, you have to tell Google Analytics, those people coming from Twitter, they're actually coming from a campaign, not from a link that someone shared at some point, right? It's a campaign that I'm paying for. And that is very simple to do. You just add, campaign parameters called, UTM as well. And basically, we'll add that to your URL destination, and Google Analytics will know, in a very simple way, how many people are coming to the website through this Twitter campaign, and how long they're staying on the website, how often they're returning, how much they're spending on the website, right? And that's great. Now you have a lot of data, and you know how many people and how much they're spending. Now, if I say, I had last month 100,000 people coming from Twitter, and they spent $50,000. Now, the question is it good or is it bad? Well, it depends on a very, very important fact, which is how much did it cost, right? So if you got $50,000 from this campaign, but you spent $20,000, that's a great campaign. But if you spend $70,000, that's a very bad campaign, right? Now, so this is cost data, right? And there is no automatic integration between Google, Facebook, Twitter, Bing, that brings cost data directly into Google Analytics for kind of obvious reasons. But what you can do is you can go to Facebook, you can go to Twitter, or you can go to LinkedIn, and you can download this data. And it's very simple, and it takes just a few minutes. And basically, you download, for example, how many clicks you had on that campaign, how many impressions, and how much it cost, right? So, and then suddenly you have a CSV sheet with all this information. And what you can do, and we built this tool called the Data Import. It's a feature on Google Analytics, which basically allows you to import cost data through CSV sheets. So basically, you go to this tool, you upload the data, and suddenly it populates all your Google Analytics reports with that data. And you will have this kind of report on Google Analytics, which tells you, for all your marketing campaigns, you can see your spend. You can see not only how many people those campaigns brought, but also what did those people do on your website and how much they spent. And suddenly you can see the return on investment for all your campaigns in one place. And obviously that helps you optimize your budgets and make better decisions when it comes to marketing. So I think that's a great way to use Google Analytics for marketing. And there are also automatic tools. So you can use the Google Analytics API to do that if you have development resources, or you can use one of those tools, Analytics Canvas and Supermetrics. They also allow you to do that automatically, so you authenticate your accounts with them, and they upload this information, I think, daily into Google Analytics. So you should totally be doing that. And again, that's another example of how a custom integration can make your data more accurate and more complete. So I think that's something that you should be looking at as well. Now, my conclusion from the brains part is, half data is approximately equal to no data. So I think, if you're looking just for a part of your data, it might be very dangerous when you're making decisions. So you should always be very careful that, you have all the data that you need and that it's coming accurately into your tool. Now, I'm going to talk now about the context, and you're all holding the booklet about the tight matrix, and basically I'll use a real example of how you can use the matrix to understand your data and to use it more, for decision making. So this is the Google Merchandise Store. How many of you know the Google Merchandise Store? Yeah, so it's a very small website where Google sells, stuff like, branded T-shirts and, branded bottles and bags and stuff like that, small things. And, not lots of people buy this kind of stuff, but, I was looking at the data, and I saw that in August 2015, we had $70,000 revenue, which is great. It's a great asset for Google. But you ask yourself, is it good that you have $70,000 revenue? Well, depends, right? You have to look at the data more carefully to understand that. Now, the first thing that I'd like to look at is time, right? So time over time comparisons. So we're looking at, week over week, month over month, year over year comparisons, right? And the first thing that I'll look at is how was it comparing, August 2015 to July 2015, right? So month over month comparison. And, we can see that we had a 9% increase in revenue. So it's good, right? I think it's good. Now, some websites, most websites, I think, most businesses, they have, it's not a problem, it's a characteristics of seasonal behavior, right? So people behave differently in different months of the year. So for example, in this case, it might be that, in August, people are on vacations and, they decide to spend their time, browsing and buying things on the Google Merchandise Store. Right? So that's one explanation. Maybe that's why we have so much more revenue in August as opposed to July. So one way to solve that is to look at, August versus August, right? So that's a year-over-year comparison. And basically we see, 11% increase in revenue. So it's, it's even better and looks like, we have we had a pretty good month on August. So I would be glad with this information, but one of the things that I like doing as well is comparing trends year over year. I think, it gives you a notion of how you're developing. So in this case, you can see, from May to August 2015 as compared to May to August 2014. And then you can see that, the trends are pretty good, and so, you're doing well when it comes to, your time over time comparisons. The second thing that I would look at, I would look at, it's still internal data, but instead of looking at a comparison, I'm looking at what's influencing my data, right? So what's influencing my, the increase in my revenue. And, one of the things to look at is looking at different properties or different interactions with your properties. And in this case, I'm looking at, the online store and the offline store. So there is a Google store in the Mountain View office, and there is a Google store on the Dublin office. And I can't share details about them, but basically what you would do is, you would use a feature called user ID. Basically, it would allow you, for someone, logging into the website, you would see, for example, when someone logs into the website and use, the same login on a store. So, for example, a loyalty card, or if you're distributing coupons on the website, you can link that coupon online and offline. So you could use the user ID to do that and send information from offline into Google Analytics using, what I mentioned before, the measurement protocol. And basically, you would have access to this kind of information, which is cross-device report. So you would see which interactions are influencing your revenue the most, right? So you could see, for example, that an offline campaign was driving lots of people online, or vice versa. So I think that's, when it comes to interactions. Now we have something else called trends, right? So that's external data. We are starting to look at external data because, I want to see how my data compares to my competitors' data, right? And in this case, we would use something called, the Google Analytics benchmarking report, which is a great set of reports. Basically, it allows you to look at your competitors and see how they are performing. So in this case, not in this case, in this report, you can choose a vertical, and not only, for example, if you are a car rental company, you can look not only at travel, but also car rental companies, and you can look at air ticket companies, and you can look at hotel companies. So you can really drill down into what kind of businesses you are comparing to. And you can also drill down into what size of businesses you're comparing to. Because if you have 10,000 users a day, you want to compare yourself to someone more or less the same size, right? You don't want to compare yourself to someone that has 1 million users a day, because that's a completely different company than you are. I mean, you can compare yourself, but basically, I think it would be wise to compare yourself more or less to people, similar to you. And of course, you could compare yourself to people, in the same country as you are. And what you would be able to see is, first of all, in terms of channels. So which channels those companies are using to acquire new users, right? And how those channels are performing. So you can see social traffic, you can see display traffic, you can see organic traffic, and see how your competitors are performing for each of those channels. And that would enlighten you in terms of how your competitors are acquiring traffic. Now, you could also look at countries, right? In which countries they're acquiring traffic, and how they're performing for each of those countries as well. And last, you can look at devices, right? So you could see, for example, that your competitors are acquiring way more mobile users, and the mobile users are staying much longer on your competitor's website. So maybe you should revisit your mobile strategy or your mobile design and see how you can improve as compared to your competitors. So the fourth thing that we would look at, so first we looked at time over time comparison. We looked at interactions, what is influencing your data. We looked at trends, comparing you to your competitors. And last, events. So for example, events, they could be, someone sees, Brad Pitt carrying a laptop bag that you sell on your store, right? That might boost your sales. So that's an external event that you have no way to control, but still you want to know that those events are happening so that you can, understand what's affecting, what's influencing your revenues. One tool that I especially like to do this is Google Finance, especially if you are listed on the stock exchange. But basically what you can do here, you can compare trends as well. So you can compare yourself to your competitors or to a specific index like NASDAQ or Dow Jones. But as you will see, there are a few letters down there on the chart and on the right side, which tells you which events in the industry affected the stock price, right? And I think that's also a great signal for you. Even if you're not listed, you could go to companies in your industry that are listed and see what is affecting their prices so that you can see, for example, if those things might be affecting your sales as well. So I think that's a great technique to understand which external events are influencing your results. And, of course, we have another tool that, I really like, which is Google Trends. And, it can be used for trends, to compare trends. But it can also be compared, you can also see the same, different letters, but the letters also tell you about events that have affected a specific keyword, and you can use that to understand what's affecting your website. Because if you see that, a specific event is, highly significantly affecting one of the keywords that send a lot of traffic to you, you could assume that it's also affecting your results, right? So I think that's a great way to look at your data. So, that's the matrix. And basically, if we look from the left side, you can see the source, which is, we have internal and external data sources. So internal data sources are, your time over time comparisons and all the interactions that happen with your properties. And then we have external data sources, which are, trends compared to our competitors, and we can see external events influencing your data. And last, if you look from top bottom, you can see, comparisons, which are time over time comparison and trend comparisons to your competitors. And you can see what is influencing the data. So it's another technique. And basically, you can see different interactions with your properties and, external events that are happening outside of your knowledge. Now, you got, a copy of the Tight Matrix booklet, but basically you can also download, there is a white paper on the Google Analytics website, and you can also download the digital version and send to your friends if you want. Now, just to summarize this part, basically, I think, context brings meaning to data. And I think, when you don't have context, if you don't, in the case of the robot, if you build a robot for Mars and it's taken to Mercury, it would never work because it just doesn't fit the environment, right? And I think that's the same thing with data, because if you look at your data in a closed way, you won't know what's affecting the data, and it's way less meaningful to you and way less actionable. So a few takeaways. First of all, half data is approximately no data. So basically, if your data is not accurate and complete, it's very dangerous for you to make decisions based on that data. So make sure that you're adding everything that you can, and that this data is accurate. And second thing, context brings meaning to data, and it's really what makes data actionable when it comes to decision making. Thank you, and happy analyzing.